we're going to make a puzzle door, target range, and a dunk tank. Not sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts. Welcome back to the Wire Academy. I'm Tonic Thunder. These missions were assigned in Lesson 2, where we cover the basics of logic gates. I recommend watching the first if you're not sure how they work. And by recommended, I mean recommended. Let's start with the puzzle door. It's locked, but after turning on the purple switch and one of the blue switches, the door unlocks, plays a sound effect, and turns on a light. When the switches are in the wrong position, the door locks, a different sound effect plays, and the light turns back off. Let's start by building some walls and a door frame. Then, we'll add a bearing servo on the ground where we want our door to pivot. Take note of the arrow on the bearing servo. This indicates the default angle the servo will hold. Now we can aim at the servo and build a simple door off of it. Right away, we can push and pull the door, but we can't keep it open, because the bearing servo is enforcing an angle. We can get access to the servo again by resizing the door. Let's use the applicator on the servo and disable it. Now the door can swing freely. The goal is to wire a signal to this enabled property to lock and unlock the door. Let's modify the servo settings so it's less springy. Torque to 800 and dampening to 100. Now that our bearing is set up, we can add the puzzle switches using logic gates. Let's place down 3 switches. We'll make 2 of them blue and 1 purple. We know that only one of the blue switches should be turned on, not both, so for this, we'd use the XOR gate. With both switches turned off, the door is already unlocked. But this isn't what we want, because turning one of the switches on will lock the door. We want the opposite to happen. So to achieve this, we can place a NOT gate after XOR, like this, to simply flip the signal at the end. Now turning on one of the switches will disable the servo, unlocking the door. With the 2 blue switches working, how do we get the purple switch into the mix? We can just add an AND gate. Let's wire the purple switch and XOR gate into this AND gate. Then, send the AND gate into the NOT gate. Now, when one of the blue switches is on, and the purple switch is on, it'll send an active signal to the NOT gate, which will then flip that signal to off to disable the servo, unlocking the door. This is technically all you need for the puzzle door to work, but we can simplify this. If you did watch my logic gates lesson, you might have noticed that we can replace the NOT and AND gates with a single NAND gate, since it'll do the same thing. Now let's add the finishing touches. We'll place a brick with a point light component on the wall next to the door. We'll turn it on to indicate when the door is unlocked. All we have to do is add a NOT gate between NAND and the light to flip the signal. Now, when the door is locked, the light is off, and it'll turn on when the door is unlocked. And now for the sound effects, we'll use the one-shot audio player. Place down 2 of them. I'll color one as green for unlock and red for lock. We can just wire the NOT gate directly to the green audio player, since we know that signal indicates the door is unlocked. Then we can just wire NAND to the red audio player, since we know it's used to send an active signal to lock the door. Now we can use the applicator on the audio players and pick whatever sound we like. And that's how you make this puzzle door. A bonus tip, you can place bricks down on the ground to work as door stoppers so it's not phasing through the wall. With your bricks in place, just click them with the selector, then press U to turn them into physics objects. Then with the manipulator, you can right-click to freeze them in place. And if you'd like, you can also make the stoppers invisible. Now that we've overcomplicated getting into your home, let's make something much simpler, a shooting range. Shooting these 4 targets from left to right will turn on 3 colored lights associated to the targets, and shooting them out of order doesn't work. Let's start by placing the barrier we need to stand behind. Then we'll place 3 colored bricks, red, yellow, and green. Using the applicator, add a point light to each of these colored bricks. Now we can set up the targets. We need 2 red targets, 1 yellow, and 1 green. Let's also use the applicator on the targets and set their active signal time to 5 seconds when shot. Using rerouters, we'll wire each of these targets up to the barrier where the 3 colored bricks are, leaving some room for our gates. I'm also color-coding the rerouters to make it easier to trace which target is which. place down 3 AND gates, and color code each one to match our lights. Now we can wire the 2 red targets to the red AND gate, and wire the AND gate to the red light. So if we shoot both red targets, our red light turns on. Now we just need to wire up the rest. Let's wire the yellow target into the yellow AND gate, then wire the red AND gate into the yellow AND gate. Lastly, we can wire the yellow AND gate to the yellow light. If we shoot just the yellow target, nothing will happen. Since we're using a chain of AND gates, we need to shoot the 2 red targets first, and the yellow target. Now, the red and yellow lights turn on. For the green target, we'll wire it the same way as the yellow one. The green target and yellow AND gate goes into the inputs of the green AND gate. Then wire the green AND gate to the light. And that's all there is to it. This example is just a nest of AND gates enforcing an order in which the targets need to be shot. Now let's learn how to use guns on your friends in the safest way possible. The dunk tank. Just like the puzzle door, this contraption relies on disabling a bearing servo. When we shoot one target, a sound effect plays. When we shoot the second target, a different sound plays, and the platform drops. Let's start by building the tank. We'll make each wall 7 studs wide and 5 studs tall. I'll resize these a little to make room for columns on each corner. And so we can see through the tank, let's paint it with some glass. Now let's add our targets on the front, 1 on each side. Using the applicator, I'll adjust these to have 5 seconds of active signal time after they're shot. Since we know we want each target to play a sound when shot, let's place down a 1-shot audio player. We can wire both targets to trigger the same audio player. To do that, we'll use an OR gate. Go ahead and wire each target to the OR gate inputs. Now we can wire the OR gate to the audio player and adjust the sound we'd like to hear. We got our targets working, great. But notice, the sound effect only plays once, even though I'm shooting each target. This is because the 1-shot audio player only plays a sound when a signal goes from off to on. The second target is only extending the signal duration. There is a solution to this problem that we'll cover in a later lesson when we talk about edge detectors, but for this example, it's not an issue. Now let's move on and add a bearing servo where we want our platform to pivot. Make sure the arrow on the bearing is pointing towards the front of the dunk tank. Next, let's add a plate to the bearing. Notice the orientation isn't right. If we hold R and move our aim, we can rotate this plate to match what we need. Based on where I'm standing, I can just aim up. Once you place the platform, it'll probably drop like this. We need to give the servo more power, so let's resize the plate so we can access the bearing. Then, use the applicator on it and set the torque to 5,000 and the dampening to 500 so it doesn't spring too much. Now if we enable and disable the servo, it's working just how we need it. So let's get it wired. Just like the puzzle door, we'll use a NAND gate. We'll place one down and wire it to the bearing servo. Then we can wire the targets to the NAND gate inputs. Now if we shoot both targets, it'll disable the bearing servo and drop the platform. The last thing to add is a sound effect for when the platform drops. Just like the puzzle door, let's wire the NAND gate into a NOT gate so we flip the signal. Then send the NOT gate into a 1-shot audio player. Go ahead and pick a sound effect to signal the platform dropping. And of course, let's add a physics object on the platform to dunk. I mean, what good is a dunk tank without Dunkin' something? America runs on Dunkin'. Dunkin' Donuts. Do they still use that slogan? I don't think they do. And that Dunkin' does it. Hit me in the face with a light before I say dunk again. The next lesson covers math gates. This is where wires get wired. Oh my god, what is wrong with me? Subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you there.